The first scream came just after the caramel apples were dipped. "Has anyone seen Caleb?" The festival crowd went quiet. Music stopped. Laughter turned to silence. In less than 60 seconds, the Autumn Harvest Festival, Summit Grove's most beloved event, became the launch point of a nightmare. 5-year-old Caleb Martin, wearing his red puffer vest and blue sneakers, had vanished into thin air. No broken fences, no signs of struggle. Just a half-empty maple leaf bag and a gut-wrenching silence where his giggles had been only moments ago. And somewhere, just beyond the laughter and into the trees, a shadow watched. The Saturday had started with so much promise. Emily Martin adjusted her son's scarf as they walked through the colorful booths of downtown Summit Grove. Pumpkins lined the sidewalks, hay bales served as benches, and the air smelled of cider and cinnamon. Caleb's tiny hand clung to hers, his other hand swiping at falling leaves as he skipped along. This was their moment. Just 6 months earlier, Emily had signed the divorce papers. Her life was now a balance act, raising a child solo while running the town's animal clinic. Caleb was her anchor, her compass, her every breath. The festival was supposed to be a break, just one day where things could feel whole. "Can I get a caramel apple, Mom?" he asked, pointing at an elderly couple carefully dipping them into gooey sugar. "Real food first, buddy," she said, ruffling his soft blonde hair. "Then it's all yours." They strolled through the booths, Caleb clutching a small cloth bag where he collected shiny acorns and crinkly red leaves. Emily even let herself relax, just a little. For once, she wasn't checking emails or answering calls from panicked pet owners. "Dr. Martin." Of course, the voice came from Amy, a young volunteer from her clinic. The look on her face said it all. "Emergency." "I'm sorry," Amy said, breathless. "That shepherd mix we took in yesterday, he's seizing. Dr. Patel's stuck in traffic, and I can't get Dr. Nguyen." Emily knelt beside Caleb. "Honey, I need to go help a dog, but I'll be quick. Mrs. Avery is right over there with Ben and Sarah. You can hang with them till I'm back." Caleb's shoulders dropped, but he nodded. "Will you be back for the pie contest?" "I promise," she said. A lie she wished wouldn't become one. She turned to glance at him one more time. Her boy walking toward Mrs. Avery's picnic blanket before disappearing into her car and racing toward the clinic. The seizure had passed by the time she got there. She stayed only long enough to stabilize the dog and make notes. A 30-minute delay at most. She sent a quick text to Mrs. Avery to check on Caleb. No response. 5 minutes passed. Then the text came. "I thought he was with you. Ben said Caleb went to look for you near the trees." Emily's chest went cold. By the time she drove back to the square, the sun was sliding west, and the sky had darkened with the first edge of a coming storm. She ran toward the edge of the field, scanning faces and yelling his name. Nothing. Sheriff Dalton was already coordinating volunteers by the time she arrived. Park rangers, EMTs, locals in flannel jackets with flashlights and whistles. Nathan Martin, Caleb's father, was there too, still wearing his dusty ranger uniform, panic cutting through his usual calm. "He doesn't have his backup inhaler," Emily said, clutching her phone. "It's still in my purse." A mile away, hidden beneath a thicket of pine, a pair of amber eyes watched. The German shepherd, fur matted and patchy, scars visible across his flank and face, tilted his head at the sound of footsteps, small, fast, and confused. The boy appeared seconds later, breath shallow, eyes wide with fear. His red vest was damp with rain. He stumbled, fell, and began to cry. From 50 yards away, Thor didn't move. His body stiffened, torn between instinct and memory. He had once followed orders without question. He had once trusted humans. But those days had died somewhere in a dusty field overseas, buried with the man who used to kneel beside him and whisper, "You're my good boy, Thor." Still, something stirred. The boy was wheezing now, clutching at his chest, his fingers blindly searching the ground. The scent of panic filled the air. Thor crept closer, low to the earth, each pawfall silent. He found the inhaler a few feet away, sniffed it, then carefully picked it up in his mouth. The boy saw him, froze, then stared as the dog dropped the device at his hand. 2 desperate puffs, a gasp of relief. Caleb's breathing steadied, but his small body shook from cold and fear. The storm broke overhead in a roar. Thor lay beside him, curling around the child, a living furnace in the middle of the wilderness. Back at the town square, the sheriff's command tent buzzed with tension. Maps were spread across tables. Volunteers organized into search grids. Deputies barked instructions over radio. "Emily, you need to rest," someone said. "I'm fine. You haven't eaten or slept. Neither has my son." Just then, a new arrival entered the tent. A clean-cut man in a windbreaker labeled Department of Agriculture. "Agent Collins," he said, flashing a badge. "Hear about your missing boy." "Why the Department of Agriculture?" Nathan asked. "Reports of an aggressive wild animal, possibly a wolf." "No wolves in this region for over a decade," said another ranger. "Well," Collins said, with a tight smile, "maybe we missed one. If you're moved by stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Heroes for Animals. Real heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they walk on 4 legs, bro." Woods. Thor didn't sleep. Every sound, branches creaking, leaves rustling, distant howls, was evaluated. His one good eye scanned the dark. At one point, something large crept too close. Thor growled. It retreated. Caleb, exhausted, clung to Thor's fur. "I wish you could talk," he whispered. "I'd ask your name." Thor licked his cheek. Somewhere, deep in the trees, the wind shifted. The storm passed, but danger had not, because others were out there, and not all of them were searching for the boy. Some were hunting the dog. The forest had a way of swallowing sound. It wasn't just the muffling of distant sirens or the way wind sifted through pine needles. It was deeper than that, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Thor knew that feeling. He'd known it in the deserts of Kandahar, crouched beside a Humvee as mortars rained down, and now, crouched beside the trembling body of a boy named Caleb, he knew it again. The storm had passed, but the air remained cold and damp. Clouds clung low, casting an eerie gray over the landscape. The boy was curled against his side, breathing, shallow but steady, his tiny fingers clutching clumps of Thor's fur like a lifeline. Thor didn't move. His muscles ached. Hunger gnawed at his gut. Every inch of his body screamed for rest, but he stayed alert, his single amber eye fixed outward, ears twitching with every crack of twig or gust of wind. Somewhere out there, moving quietly, was something that didn't belong. And Thor, protector by training, survivor by necessity, was not about to let it get any closer. Back in Summit Grove, the search teams regrouped as the sun rose over wet, muddy hills. Nathan Martin stood beside a mud-streaked park ranger SUV, mapping out the latest search grid. His knuckles were white where he gripped the hood. "We've covered the eastern slope and the riverbed," he said to Sheriff Dalton. "If he kept walking, he might have reached the Pine Barrens. It's steeper, but kids are unpredictable." "Sheriff," Dalton nodded grimly. "The dogs are picking up something near the old fire road. We're redeploying north." "What about Agent Collins?" Emily asked, stepping into the circle, her jacket soaked from hours in the rain. "Off doing his own thing," the sheriff muttered. "He keeps pushing us to focus northwest. Says it's based on scent patterns. But that terrain's dangerous. Loose rock, elevation shifts. Caleb wouldn't go that way," Nathan argued. "I know," Dalton said. "But the guy has federal credentials and I've got to cover all angles." Emily's jaw tightened. "Then send someone with him. He shouldn't be alone out there." But Collins wasn't alone. He'd taken 2 deputies with him, neither of whom had experience in the deeper parts of the forest. And as they vanished into the trees, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that his interest wasn't in the boy at all. Thor nudged Caleb gently. The boy stirred, lips tinged blue, teeth chattering. "Mom," he whispered. Thor licked his cheek again, soft but firm, like a nudge saying, "Not yet, little one. Stay with me." The dog shifted, pressing more of his body against the boy's to share warmth. He needed to find shelter, something better than this hollow under a tree. But Caleb could barely walk. Thor stood, gave a low grunt, and lowered himself again. He'd carry him. The boy didn't resist. Whether from exhaustion, trust, or instinct, he curled onto Thor's back like he belonged. There, his small arms clung to the dog's neck, and together they moved slowly, carefully through the underbrush. Each step hurt. Thor's old injuries screamed in protest. But he kept going, ears scanning, nose alert, legs steady. He moved with purpose, like he had years ago, carrying wounded soldiers across dirt roads under enemy fire. Only this time, there was no convoy waiting, just trees, and a boy who couldn't survive alone. Meanwhile, down in town, Dr. Sarah Avery stared at her computer screen, eyes narrowed. She'd been pulling county vet records all night, following a hunch. There had been multiple sightings of a one-eyed German shepherd over the past few months, always alone, always quiet. Farmers said he scared off coyotes. A hiker claimed he found the dog guarding a rabbit with a broken leg, and not once had the dog shown aggression. Sarah leaned back in her chair and pulled up an old government veterinary database. She searched for military working dogs marked missing, in action. Her heart skipped when one entry flashed. Thor 7, MPC Unit Special Forces Division Status, presumed KIA, Operation Hawkeye, Kandahar Province. Last handler, Sergeant Logan Pierce, deceased. She clicked on the file. There he was, Thor, before. The scars. Two bright amber eyes, ears alert, tongue out, standing beside a soldier with a crooked smile. Her phone buzzed. It was Emily. Sarah, she answered. I have a bad feeling, Emily said. About this agent, Collins. Something's not right. I think I know who your mystery dog is, Sarah replied. And if I'm right, you're not the only one watching him. Thor found a new spot, an overturned tree trunk with a dry, hollowed base, just wide enough for Caleb to curl inside. The boy whimpered softly, his skin pale, breath shallow. Thor pressed against him again, lowering his head near the boy's heart. The rise and fall of the chest was slower than before. He'd seen this, in wounded soldiers, in fellow dogs pulled from wreckage. Caleb was fading. Thor's instincts kicked in. He began to whine, not loudly, not enough to attract threats, but a low, urgent sound. He sniffed the boy's breath, nudged his face, licked the skin near his ear. Caleb groaned. That was enough. The dog lay down beside him again, tail curled, eyes still watching the woods. Then, a rustle, a scent, human, but not right. Agent Collins, crouched beside a patch of disturbed dirt. He held a small device in his hand, one not issued to most wildlife officers. It blinked red once, then green. Got you, he muttered. Behind him, one of the deputies said, That dog print again. Collins didn't answer. He checked the wind, adjusted his grip on the satellite phone, and walked silently into the forest's shadow. The signal was close. His employers had warned him, do not harm the asset unless absolutely necessary. But if the dog resisted, he had authorization. Emily and Nathan stood at the base of the ridge watching as trained K-9s sniffed the trail. The scent's stronger here, the handler called out. Something rested here. Nathan stepped forward. He saw it too, two sets of prints. One large, one small, moving together. That's Caleb, he said quietly. Emily knelt, her hand hovering over a small, perfect shoe print in the mud. He wasn't alone, she whispered. Someone, or something, was with him. Just then the sky cracked with a fresh roll of thunder. A chill returned to the air, and from somewhere beyond the ridge, a sound echoed back. Not a growl, not a bark, a child's cough. Thor tensed. He heard them, searchers, dogs, humans. Close, he turned to Caleb, who stirred weakly. Home, the boy whispered. Thor licked his cheek again. Then, rising with effort, The dog crouched low beside the child. It was time. He had protected. He had endured. Now he would lead them home. Sheriff Dalton stared at the boot print next to the child's shoe. "That's fresh," he muttered, glancing at Nathan. "Who else is in this quadrant?" "Only the agent," Nathan replied, checking his radio. "Collins took 2 deputies northeast of here, but they shouldn't be this far west." Emily was already kneeling in the dirt, gently brushing pine, needles from a distinct paw print beside the smaller human tracks. Her breath caught. "This is a dog. A large one." The print was unmistakable, deeply pressed, with a clean, symmetrical shape. Not a wolf. Not a coyote. A shepherd. She looked up, eyes meeting Nathan's. He's still with Caleb. And for the first time in hours, she let herself believe, maybe, just maybe, our boy isn't alone. Half a mile uphill, Thor moved like a ghost through the underbrush, Caleb clinging to his back. The boy was barely conscious, his arms loose around the dog's thick neck. His breathing had grown quieter, his weight heavier. Thor pushed forward, even as every step sent a flare of pain through his joints. He knew the sound of humans behind him. He recognized the cadence of organized search, calls, whistles, and the barks of trained dogs. But he also knew the other sound, the one moving ahead between the trees. He knew that sound all too well. Predator, but not one born of the forest. Agent Collins crouched in a shallow gully, his gloved hand gripping a tranquilizer gun. The tracker in his pocket blinked rhythmically. Less than 100 yards now. His breathing was steady. He had done this before. Recovery missions in South America, Eastern Europe. This wasn't just about a dog. This was about proprietary military training. A living, breathing asset worth millions, and he wasn't going back empty-handed. He signaled silently to the 2 deputies flanking him, then moved forward, just as a faint growl rumbled through the air. Collins froze. He knew that growl, and he knew what it meant. The dog knew he was there. Nathan crested a ridge and stopped short. "Over here!" Emily rushed up beside him, nearly tripping over roots as she spotted the scene below. There, at the edge of a shallow stream, Caleb lay curled on a patch of moss, barely visible beneath Thor's massive frame. The dog stood between the boy and the trees, muscles taut, one eye fixed on something unseen in the woods. He wasn't barking. He was bracing. A protector, a soldier. "Dear God," Emily whispered, already scrambling downhill. Thor didn't move, not until he saw the boy's mother. Then slowly, he stepped back, giving just enough space for her to kneel beside her son. He kept his body angled between them and the woods. Nathan slid down next, placing a hand on Thor's back. The dog flinched, but didn't retreat. "Good boy," Nathan said softly, eyes misting. "You brought him home." Emily gently checked, Caleb's pulse lifting his eyelids, brushing wet leaves from his face. "He's cold, but he's alive. His heart slow, but steady." Behind them, the radio crackled with voices from other search teams converging. But something wasn't right. Thor hadn't relaxed. His gaze stayed locked on the tree line. Sheriff Dalton arrived a few minutes later with 2 deputies and the canine handler. "Get the medics up here," he ordered. "We've got the boy." Emily wrapped Caleb in a thermal blanket handed to her from the ranger pack. "He's stable for now," she said. "But we need to get him to the hospital." "We've got a stretcher inbound," the handler said, clicking into his radio. Then, snap. A sharp crack of twigs echoed to the east. Thor's ears pinned back, his body tensed. "Did you hear that?" Nathan asked, turning toward the sound. Another crack. Closer. "Show yourself," Dalton shouted into the woods, his hand on his sidearm. Silence. Then Agent Collins stepped from the trees, both hands raised. "Easy," he said. "Didn't mean to spook anyone." He looked at Thor. The dog growled low. "Is that the dog?" Collins asked casually, eyes narrowing. "He with the boy?" "He saved the boy," Emily snapped. Collins didn't blink. "That dog is a military asset. He needs to come with me. Sheriff Dalton stepped forward. Under what authority? I have federal orders. Department of Agriculture. You're tracking livestock or a war hero? Nathan shot back. Collins gave a tight smile. You wouldn't understand. Thor growled again, louder this time. The deputies instinctively placed hands on their belts. Hey, Emily said sharply, standing between them and the dog. He's not going anywhere. He's dangerous, Collins said, and you don't know what he's capable of. No, Emily said, you don't. 15 minutes later, a stretcher carried Caleb toward a waiting ranger truck. Thor followed, his steps slow but steady, never more than 2 feet from the boy's side. The paramedics didn't argue. They'd seen enough to know this wasn't just some stray. This was a guardian. When they reached the trailhead, Dr. Sarah Avery was waiting with a veterinary transport vehicle. She stepped out the moment she saw Thor, eyes widening with recognition. It's him, she whispered. What? Emily asked. Sarah held up her scanner. He's chipped. Military ID, Thor 7, Special Forces K9, missing 3 years ago. She showed them the screen. The digital profile included a photo from before, the dog fully intact, 2 amber eyes, ears high, body lean and trained. Emily looked from the screen to the one-eyed dog beside her son. Same posture, same eyes, same soul. Back at the ranger station, Colonel David Hamilton arrived unannounced. Tall, silver-haired, and wearing full army dress uniform, he stepped from his SUV with purpose. I got a call about a recovery, he said to Sheriff Dalton. Is the asset secure? Dalton frowned. The dog? He's here. But he's not an asset. He's a hero. Hamilton met Emily and Nathan inside the med bay. Caleb rested on a gurney, oxygen tubes in place, his chest rising and falling peacefully. Thor sat beside him. I authorized his training, Hamilton said softly. Thor was one of ours, one of the best. You came to take him back? Emily asked, arms folded. Hamilton looked at the boy, then the dog. I came to make sure the right people have a say. Collins entered seconds later, red-faced and frustrated. Sir, I have orders. Those orders, Hamilton interrupted, are superseded by Pentagon clearance. I've spoken to the Secretary of Defense. Thor's status is under review. Collins's mouth opened, then closed. Sheriff Dalton leaned in. Let me be real clear. This town doesn't let its heroes walk away in chains. Dog or not. Hamilton nodded. No chains. Not today. Later that evening, with Caleb asleep and Thor resting on a cot beside him, Nathan stood in the hallway sipping coffee. Sarah approached. I ran his medicals, malnourished, old injuries, scars from restraints, fighting scars. Nathan stiffened. Dogfights? Sarah nodded. Likely forced, but he never turned. That kind of loyalty? You don't train it, that's who he is. Nathan looked through the glass at the sleeping boy and the silent dog beside him. You think they'll let him stay? Sarah smiled faintly. I think he's already made that choice. The fluorescent lights in the pediatric ICU buzzed faintly, but Caleb Martin didn't notice. He lay still, his small frame surrounded by wires, tubes, and monitors. Machines clicked and beeped around him, recording vitals that had improved only marginally since he was found in the forest. His lips were still pale. His breaths came in faint whispers beneath the oxygen mask. At the foot of the hospital bed, Thor stood like a statue. The big German shepherd hadn't moved since they'd wheeled Caleb in hours ago. Not to eat, not to lie down, not even when they weigh him. Nurses tried coaxing him away with treats and gentle words. He stood his post. One eye closed from fatigue. The other, amber and alert, watched Caleb's every breath like his life depended on it. Because in Thor's world, it did. In the hallway, Emily leaned her head against the beige wall outside her son's room, her eyes burning with exhaustion. She hadn't slept. Neither had Nathan. They stood shoulder to shoulder sipping bitter hospital coffee, watching as nurses passed by with clipboards and quiet concern. Colonel Hamilton joined them a moment later, carrying a file folder and a troubled expression. "I've just spoken with the Department of Defense," he said without preamble, "and I need to tell you the full truth about that dog." Emily straightened. "We already know he's special. He saved our son's life." "You know that," Hamilton said gently, "but you don't know why." Back in the ICU, Thor stirred. Caleb let out a soft whimper in his sleep, his heart rate spiking slightly on the monitor. Thor stepped forward, nose touching the boy's hand. A low whine rumbled from his chest. The nurse on duty watched in disbelief as the monitor readings began to settle, oxygen stabilizing, heart rate dropping into a safer range. She scribbled notes on her clipboard, then quietly whispered to the dog, "You're doing more than we are, buddy." Thor didn't respond. He just kept watching. His designation was Guardian 7, Hamilton said, setting the folder on a side table in the waiting room. Part of a classified program called Project Guardian, an experimental unit within Special Forces. Nathan furrowed his brow. "Medical detection?" "More than that," Hamilton nodded. "They trained dogs like Thor to sense subtle physiological changes, early infection, internal bleeding, even neurological events like seizures. It went beyond scent. These dogs were conditioned through months of neural mapping and targeted reinforcement. It was cutting edge." Emily flipped through the pages. Photographs, charts, military jargon. She stopped at a picture of Thor as he once was. Bright-eyed, upright, harnessed, the name Thor 7 stamped on his vest. "And then he disappeared," she said. Hamilton's expression darkened. His handler, Staff Sergeant Logan Pierce, was killed during an ambush. Thor was injured and went missing in the chaos. We assumed he was dead, or worse, captured. Emily blinked. "He was captured, wasn't he?" Hamilton hesitated. "Yes. We believe he was taken by a private military contractor operating outside official oversight. Named Cerberus Group." Nathan sat forward. "Never heard of them." "You wouldn't. They specialize in off-book asset recovery and repurposing." "Repurposing?" Emily asked, her voice sharp. "Dogs like Thor are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Cerberus tried to retrain him for private security. When that failed, they sold him into illegal fighting circuits. Underground, untraceable." Emily covered her mouth. "We believe Thor escaped during a raid on a New Mexico facility 18 months ago," Hamilton added. "He's been wandering ever since." Nathan's jaw clenched. "And Agent Collins, he works for them." "Unofficially, he has federal credentials, but he's also on Cerberus's payroll. They want Thor back." "But why?" Emily asked. "Why not just let him retire?" Hamilton met her eyes. "Because he works. Even now. He still detects anomalies before machines do. You saw it with your son?" Later that night, the ICU door creaked open as Dr. Hastings stepped in, flanked by a technician carrying a mobile ultrasound unit. "We need to reassess Caleb's lung condition," Hastings said gently. "His fever's back and his breathing's getting labored." Emily stood beside Caleb's bed, nodding. "Do whatever you need." Thor stayed frozen by the foot of the bed, tail low, eyes locked on the technician as he moved closer with equipment. "Ignore the dog," Emily told him. "He's protective." "Got it," the tech mumbled, trying to maneuver the probe into place. But as soon as he touched the left side of Caleb's chest, Thor growled, a low, serious warning that made the technician freeze. Hastings raised an eyebrow. "What is it, boy?" Emily stepped forward, placing a hand on Thor's back. "Is something wrong, buddy?" Thor moved just slightly and touched his nose to Caleb's right side. Then he pawed at the air, as if pointing. The room went still. "Move the probe," Hastings said, "right side upper lobe." The technician adjusted and froze. "There it is," Hastings murmured. "A localized infection pocket. Not visible on the X-rays." Emily's mouth dropped open. "He found it," the technician whispered. "Run IV antibiotics," Hastings ordered. "And thank the dog." In the hospital lobby, Agent Collins argued into his phone. "No, they're keeping him in the ICU. They're saying he's a therapy animal now," he hissed. "This is getting ridiculous." I want that dog in containment. He paused, listening. I don't care what they say. The contract is still valid. He belongs to us. He turned just in time to see Colonel Hamilton walk in through the sliding glass doors, flanked by two uniformed military police officers. Collins hung up quickly. You've got some nerve, he said. Hamilton approached slowly. You've got a federal contract based on stolen property. That dog was never yours to claim. You've got no jurisdiction here. Oh, I do now, Hamilton replied, holding up a sealed envelope. Signed by the Secretary of Defense. As of this moment, all custody decisions involving Guardian 7 fall under direct military authority. Collins turned red. You can't. Hamilton stepped closer. I already did. By morning, Caleb's condition had stabilized. The pneumonia had stopped spreading. The infection had responded to treatment. And for the first time since he was found, he opened his eyes and whispered, Mom. Emily leaned in, brushing his hair back with trembling fingers. Hey, sweetheart. I'm here. He turned his head weakly. Where's Thor? The dog lifted his head from the floor, his ears perking. He stepped forward, placing his paw gently on the mattress. Caleb smiled. You stayed. 2 days later, in a small meeting room near the hospital's administrative wing, a decision was made. Colonel Hamilton stood beside a table piled with documents, flanked by Dr. Sarah Avery, Sheriff Dalton, Emily, and Nathan. There's precedent, Hamilton said. Military working dogs can be retired to civilian families, especially those who formed strong bonds. So we could adopt him? Nathan asked. With conditions, Hamilton replied. He'll still be monitored by the DoD. He'll need regular veterinary evaluations. But yes, if approved, he can live out his life with you. Emily looked at the others. Then what do we need to sign? Sarah smiled. Already printed everything. Let's get it done before someone changes their mind. That night, Emily sat beside Caleb's hospital bed, paperwork in her lap, pen in hand. You're really going to be ours, Thor, she whispered as the big dog rested his head across her son's legs. Caleb reached out, his fingers curling into Thor's scruff. You don't have to run anymore, he said sleepily. Thor didn't move, but the soft thump of his tail against the floor said everything. By the third night at Denver Children's Hospital, the nurses had stopped trying to convince Thor to leave the room. They'd learned their lesson. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He didn't get in the way. He just stayed, stationed like a sentinel beneath Caleb Martin's bed, always alert, always listening. Every time a machine beeped out of rhythm, every time Caleb stirred in his sleep, the one-eyed German Shepherd was the first to notice. He rarely moved, but when he did, it was with purpose. When the IV bag beeped, he stood. When Caleb moaned in his sleep, he rose and nudged the mattress. When a new nurse entered the room, he stayed still, but he watched every single step. The ICU staff didn't bother with protocol anymore. They just made sure there was a bowl of water beside the boy's bed and a folded towel where Thor could rest his front paws. Because even the most skeptical nurses were beginning to understand. This wasn't just a dog. Emily returned from the hospital cafeteria with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Nathan, who sat slouched in a vinyl waiting room chair just outside Caleb's room. Any change? She asked. Some, he said, rubbing his eyes. He's holding steady. Numbers are good. And Thor? Still doing his shift? That dog is a damn machine. Emily sat beside him, sipping slowly. They sent me more paperwork this morning, finalizing the adoption. One last evaluation. Who's evaluating? Hamilton? No. Someone from the Pentagon, a civilian behavioral expert who used to oversee retired K-9 placement. Name's Dr. Megan Lee. She's flying in tonight. Nathan raised an eyebrow. We've already seen him save Caleb's life. Twice. What more do they need? Emily exhaled. Proof that he's not a threat to others. That he's stable. Nathan scoffed softly. He's more stable than I am. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. They both knew how these things worked. One wrong move. One misinterpretation of Thor's body language, and it could all be taken away. Again. Across town at the Pinehurst County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Dalton was flipping through reports when his phone rang. It was Colonel Hamilton. "I need a favor," the colonel said. "Cerberus hasn't given up." Dalton stood suddenly alert. "What do you mean?" "They're pushing hard. Legal teams. Pressure from lobbyists. There's a rumor they've dispatched someone, off the books, a private retrieval agent. Someone like Collins? Worse, someone who won't flash a badge, just take the dog and vanish." Dalton's voice hardened. "That dog is part of this town now. We take care of our own." "Then be ready," Hamilton said, "just in case." Back at the hospital, Thor lifted his head. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. But something had changed. A scent. An echo in the hallway. Footsteps that didn't match the rhythm of nurses or doctors. Too soft. Too careful. He stood. Caleb stirred. "Thor?" he murmured. The dog looked back briefly, then returned to his guard position, posture rigid. Someone was near. A nurse tapped lightly on the glass. "You have a visitor," she told Emily. "From D.C." Emily stood and straightened. Her sweater as a tall, composed woman with dark hair and a neat bun entered the pediatric wing. "Dr. Lee?" Emily asked. "Yes." "I've reviewed Thor's file. May I see him?" Nathan pushed the door open for her. "He's right there. Same place he's been all week." Lee stepped in slowly, crouching low, letting Thor see her hands. She didn't approach Caleb. She didn't speak. She simply sat, her body turned slightly sideways, signaling she wasn't a threat. Thor watched her carefully, muscles tense, but unmoving. After 2 minutes of silence, she spoke. "Thor." His ears twitched. "I know your name. Guardian 7. I was part of your training rotation in San Antonio. You probably don't remember me." No reaction. But the tension in his body eased. Just slightly. Lee didn't move closer. "You've done well," she said. "Really well." Thor sat, then slowly he stepped forward. "Not all the way, just a few feet. Enough." Lee nodded. "That's all I needed." Later that evening, Dr. Lee joined Emily and Nathan in the hospital's family lounge. "You've got nothing to worry about," she said. He's calm, responsive, bonded to Caleb, protective but not aggressive. He's fit for civilian life. Emily sagged in her chair. "So it's done? I'll file the report tonight. It'll go up the chain, but Colonel Hamilton already has provisional clearance to start the transfer." Nathan reached out and squeezed Emily's hand. Dr. Lee smiled. "You got lucky, not just with Caleb, but with him. He saved our son," Emily said softly. "I owe him everything." "No," Lee said, standing. "You gave him something too." Emily looked up. "You gave him someone to protect again." It was just after midnight when the fire alarm went off. At first it was just a distant beep. Then lights. Then the automated voice. "Attention. A fire has been reported in the building. Please remain calm." Nurses moved quickly, trained and precise. Pediatric patients were their top priority. Caleb stirred, confused and frightened, but Thor was already up, alert, ready. Nathan appeared seconds later, already slipping on his boots. "What's going on?" A nurse shook her head. "False alarm. Probably. But protocol says we prep for evacuation anyway." Emily helped gather Caleb's things while the nurse checked his lines. "He's stable enough to move," she confirmed. As they began wheeling the gurney into the hall, Thor paused. His nose lifted. Something wasn't right. The scent was there again. Same as earlier. Not smoke, not medicine. Metal, oil, gunpowder. His growl was low and focused. Emily noticed. "What is it, boy?" Then the lights flickered. At the service entrance downstairs, a man dressed in hospital scrubs keyed open a side door, letting 2 figures in. Both wore dark jackets and earpieces. No insignias, no questions. They moved quickly. One held a tranquilizer rifle, In the stairwell, Thor turned sharply. Someone was coming. He stepped between the gurney and the door, growling louder now. Caleb whimpered. "Thor, what's wrong?" Nathan peered down the hallway and swore. "We've got company." Emily froze. "What do you mean?" "Not hospital staff," he said. "Those guys are armed." From down the hall, a voice barked, "Step away from the dog." Nathan raised his hands instinctively. Emily positioned herself in front of the gurney. Thor stood tall, his one eye locked onto the shadows approaching. Then, he charged. The hallway exploded into motion. One of the men raised the tranquilizer gun, but Thor was faster. He leapt, teeth sinking into the man's padded forearm, forcing the rifle to the ground. The second man pulled a taser, but Nathan tackled him, driving him against the wall. Screams echoed down the hall. Nurses scattered. A security guard blew a whistle. Thor held firm until backup arrived. Within minutes, the intruders were restrained. Hospital security and Denver police had them in cuffs. They refused to speak, but on one of them, hidden beneath a windbreaker, was a patch. Cerberus. Colonel Hamilton arrived just before sunrise. He stood beside Thor, who now lay curled beside Caleb's bed once again, exhausted but uninjured. "I warned them," Hamilton muttered. "But I didn't think they'd push this far." Emily paced the room. They tried to steal him. Inside a children's hospital, Nathan was furious. "We could press charges." "You will," Hamilton said. "And more. I've already contacted the DOJ. Cerberus overstepped. They're done." He turned to Thor and knelt beside him. "You still got it in you, don't you, soldier?" Thor opened his eye, wagged his tail, then rested his head back on Caleb's foot. Later that day, Emily sat beside her son, who was finally sitting up and eating applesauce. "Mom," he said quietly, "are they going to take Thor away?" She looked at him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "No, baby, he's yours now." Caleb smiled and reached down to scratch behind Thor's ears. "Then I'm never letting go." Thor, without a sound, licked the boy's hand in agreement, and somewhere deep in the heart of that battered dog, something old and powerful settled. This was his forever post. 3 weeks after the incident at Denver Children's Hospital, the Martin family returned home to Summit Grove. It was late fall now, and the mountain air had turned crisp. Leaves skittered across the driveway as Nathan helped Emily carry Caleb, still a little weak but finally off oxygen, up the porch steps of their small farmhouse. Thor walked ahead, tail high, nose twitching at every familiar scent. He had made this journey before, quiet and alone, slipping through the edge of the pines at night to find scraps of food and safety. But now he walked through the front door like he belonged, because he did. The town showed up 2 days later. Neighbors brought pies, casseroles, and stacks of firewood. The mayor gave Caleb a certificate and a key to the town, plastic, but shiny, and real to a 5-year-old. The sheriff said a few words. Even the high school marching band showed up to play the national anthem. But Thor was the star. He sat beside Caleb as the crowd clapped and cheered. He wore a simple black collar, no longer a tactical vest, though the tag clipped to it read, Guardian 7, retired with honor. The children took turns petting him. Reporters tried to snap photos. He tolerated it all with calm dignity, until Caleb got tired. Then he stood and positioned himself right next to the boy's side again, a silent signal. "This is over. We're going home," and the crowd respectfully stepped back. Back inside the farmhouse, life returned to something like normal, though nothing could ever truly be the same. Emily returned to the animal clinic part-time, her staff covering her shifts when she needed to be home. Nathan cut back on ranger patrols and focused on trails near town. Caleb spent mornings with a local teacher who came to the house and afternoons napping with Thor curled against his legs. The dog never left his side. He sat beside the bathtub when Caleb took his medicine. He lay beside the bed when Caleb coughed at night. He followed him out to the chicken coop and back inside for snacks. Sometimes Emily caught Thor watching Caleb, not just as a guard, but as if taking inventory, checking, Always checking. Breathing? Good. Walking straight? Good. Smiling? Very good. She'd never seen anything like it. On a quiet Sunday, Emily stood in the backyard with a mug of tea, watching Thor nose around the garden. She'd been thinking a lot lately, about fate, about the strange way lives collided, about what it meant to be chosen by something wild and loyal and fierce. Nathan stepped outside and joined her. "He's finally relaxing," he said. Emily nodded. Took him long enough. "You know what Colonel Hamilton said before he left?" "What?" "That Thor's last mission was supposed to be with a Special Forces unit in Syria, but it got reassigned at the last second. Logistics issue, different handler, new orders." Emily looked over. So, if that hadn't happened, Thor might not have ended up lost, or in that camp, or in our woods. They stood in silence for a beat. "Life's weird," Nathan added. Emily laughed softly. "Yeah, but sometimes it gets it right." Later that week, Dr. Sarah Avery stopped by with Thor's final medical report. "He's fully recovered," she said. "Weight's back up. His old injuries have healed well. Even the eye socket's closed without infection." Caleb sat beside her in the kitchen feeding Thor pieces of apple. "What about his training?" Nathan asked. "He still follows all his original commands," Sarah replied. "But he's not responding to non-family members anymore. That's a good sign. He's bonded. You're his pack now." She turned to Caleb. "You're his forever human, kiddo." Caleb grinned. "I know." Sarah looked down at Thor. "You ready to be just a dog now?" Thor rested his chin on Caleb's knee. That was answer enough. But not everything had settled. At the edge of town, across from a run-down gas station, a black SUV sat idling with tinted windows. Inside, a man in a dark suit watched through binoculars. As Thor trotted beside the boy near the edge of the forest trail, he made a note on a pad: subject stable, integrated with child, no further action recommended. Then he reached for a secure phone. "Asset Guardian 7 is unrecoverable," he said. "Recommend closure of file." A long pause, then finally, "Understood." The man started the engine, pulled onto the main road, and vanished into the trees. Thor never even looked up. But for the first time in months, his posture softened completely. A few days later, on a sunny afternoon with a cool breeze, the Martins hosted a small barbecue in the backyard for close friends and neighbors. Caleb was laughing, chasing bubbles, his energy finally restored. Emily flipped burgers. Nathan cleaned the grill. Sarah and Sheriff Dalton sat on lawn chairs with lemonade, and Thor lay on a blanket beneath the oak tree, eyes half closed, tail flicking gently every time someone called his name. He was home, and he knew it. That night, Emily tucked Caleb into bed and kissed his forehead. "You know you're the luckiest kid in the world, right?" Caleb nodded sleepily. "Because of Thor?" "Because Thor chose you." Caleb reached out, resting his hand on the sleeping dog's back. "Then I'll take care of him forever," he said. "Even when I grow up." Thor didn't wake, but his tail thumped twice against the floor. And for the first time since Afghanistan, since chaos and fire and noise, since the loss of his first handler, Thor truly slept. Not the restless dozing of survival, but deep, safe, peaceful sleep, like family. Thank you so much for following the story of Caleb and Thor, a tale of bravery, survival, and the unbreakable bond between a child and a dog with a soldier's heart. If you had the chance to adopt a hero like Thor, would you do it? Let us know in the comments. And from all of us, thank you for watching Heroes for Animals.